Okay, story so far. Zoe, our little heroine, had a happy life even though her mum had died when she was young. Her and her dad had a great life together until Sheila, the stepmom, came along, who wasn't very nice at all. And Zoe suspected that Sheila was responsible for the death of Ginger, her beloved hamster. So Zoe's life isn't particularly happy now, and every time she leaves the house, Tina Trotz, the local bully, gives her a very hard time. So she's feeling quite sad and lonely, and then finds her a little baby rat, which she befriends, and she ends up calling Armitage after the name written in the toilet for some reason. So she takes Armitage to school because she's afraid if she leaves him home, Sheila will find him. And she's already had a run-in with Tina in the toilets, which resulted in Armitage biting Tina's finger. So if that's not bad enough, she hides Armitage in her breast pocket of her blazer. And she's in Miss Midge's class, and Miss Midge is ferocious. Very little, but very, very unpleasant. And we ended our story with Miss Midge peering at Zoe, saying, "Do you have a rat on your head?" Here we go. What is the worst thing that could ever happen to you at school? When you arrive in the morning, you walk through the playground and realise you forgot to put on any clothes except your tie. Maybe in an exam you become so nervous about getting all the answers right, your stomach churns so badly that your bum explodes. During a football match, you run around kissing all your teammates after you've scored a goal, only to be told by the PE teacher that it was an own goal. You trace your family tree in a history class and find out you're related to the headmaster. Or you have a sneezing fit in front of the head teacher and cover them from head to toe in snot. Or maybe it's fancy dress day at school, but you get the date wrong and you spend the entire day dressed up like Lady Gaga. Or you're playing Hamlet and William Shakespeare play at school, and halfway through the "to be or not to be" speech, your auntie rushes up from the audience, spits on a tissue and wipes it in your face. Or you take your trainers off after games and the smell of mouldy cheese is so bad the entire school has to be closed down for a week to be defumigated. Or at lunchtime in the dining hall, you overdose on baked beans and you do a blow-off that lasts all afternoon. Or you smuggle a rat into school in your blazer and it climbs up and sits on your head during a lesson. Any of those would be enough to get you added to the list of infamous pupils, those famous for all the wrong reasons. With the rat on head incident, Zoe was about to be on the list of shame forever. "You have a rat on your head," repeated Miss Midge. "Oh, do I?" said Zoe, mocking innocently. "Don't worry," said Miss Midge. "Sit very still and we'll call the caretaker. I'm sure he can kill it." "Kill it? No!" Zoe reached on her head and lifted the rodent over her now more even wiry mess of red hair and held it in front of her. Children got up from their seats and backed away from her. "Zoe, do you know this rat?" said Miss Midge suspiciously. No," said Zoe. And at this point, Armitage ran up her arm and climbed into her breast pocket. Zoe looked down at him. Did that rat just climb into your pocket?" "No," said Zoe ridiculously. "It is clear," said Miss Midge, "this filthy beast is your pet? Armitage is not of a filthy beast. Armitage, said Miss Midge. Why on earth is he called that? Oh, it's a long story. Look, he's safely in my pocket now. Please continue. The teacher and the rest of the class were gobsmacked by her casual response, and for a moment nobody knew what to say or do. The silence was deafening, but it didn't last. You heard what the headmaster said, roared Miss Midge. Instant suspension. But I can explain. Get out! Get out of my classroom, you vile little girl, and take that disgusting creature with you, snarled the teacher. Without making eye contact with anyone, Zoe quietly gathered up her books and pens and put them in her plastic bag. She pushed the chair back and it squealed against the shiny floor. Excuse me, said Zoe to no one in particular. As quietly as she could, she made her way to the door. She put her hand on the handle. I said instant suspension, yelled Miss Midge. I don't want to see you till the end of term. Bye-bye then, said Zoe, not sure of what else to say. She opened the classroom door slowly and closed it behind her quietly. Behind the frosted glass in the corridor, she could see 30 little faces pressed up against it and watching her go. There was a pause, and then there was an enormous eruption of laughter as the little girl made her way along the hall. Miss Midge yelled at them, "Silence!" With everyone still in class, the school felt strangely tranquil. All Zoe could hear were her own little footsteps echoing along the corridor and the flapping, flap, flap, flap of the rogue sole of her shoe. For a moment, the drama of what had just taken place seemed extremely distant, as if it had happened in someone else's lifetime. School had never felt so eerily empty before. It was like it was a dream. Yet, if this was the calm after the storm, it wasn't to last long. The bell rang for lunch break. Ding, 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 ding. And like a dam bursting, the corridor doors, or the classroom doors along the long corridor, flung open and a blast of school children burst out. Zoe quickened her pace. She knew the news of her having a rat on her head in history class would spread like the plague itself. Zoe had to get out of school, and fast. Soon Zoe noticed she was running, but her short little legs were no match for the older, taller kids, who were soon barging past her so they could be the first in the queue at the burger van to stuff their faces for lunch. Zoe shielded Armitage with her hand. She'd been knocked to the ground in the school corridor so many times before, but at last she made it into the relative safety of the playground. She kept her head down, hoping not to be recognised. However, there was only one way out of the playground and onto the main road. Every day there was the same grimy, beaten-up burger van parked outside, which had Bert's Burgers emblazoned across it. Even though the food from the van was horrible, the school dinners were even more nauseating. So most of the kids took the least worst option and queued up outside the van for their lunch. Bert was as unsavoury as the burgers he served. The self-styled chef always wore the same filthy striped top and grease-encrusted jeans, which he wore low below his giant belly. Over the top hung a bloody overall, and the man's hands were always filthy, and his thick mop of hair was covered in flakes of dandruff the size of Rice Krispies. Ugh. Even his dandruff had dandruff. The flakes would drop into the deep fat fryer, causing it to hiss and spat whenever he leaned over it. Bert would sniff continuously like a pig snuffling in the mud. No one had ever seen his eyes, as he always wore the same pitch black wraparound sunglasses. His false teeth rattled in his mouth whenever he spoke, causing him to whistle involuntarily. School legend had it that they had once fallen out of his mouth into a bap. We're going to stop there, but click straight on to the next part and we'll continue with the story.